Good evening, everybody. It is Sunday night in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My name is Adam Bittner, Assistant Sports Editor for Multimedia at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, joined by Paul Zeise, our Post-Gazette sports columnist for our Steelers postgame show on the Post-Gazette Sports Now YouTube channel podcast network. After a big Steelers victory, 37-15 against the New York Jets, Paul, things started slowly and then really kind of took off. And by the end of the night, that looked like offense to me. I think we're going to get into the individual performances, as we go through the show. But what was your, top line reaction to one of the more dominant Steelers wins we've seen in recent years?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think really the game changed right before the half. I get it when you got Aaron Rodgers, you want to be a little bit aggressive, but the Jets sort of had it in control. They were up 15-7 or 15-6 or whatever it was, and he tries to jam one in and throws an interception, and the Steelers go down. That to me, I thought was really kind of the turning point in the game. I think if they go in and even if they just sort of, run the clock out a little bit there and they go in up 15-6, I think it's a different game, obviously, altogether. But that to me, and then of course there was a second interception that bounced off the receiver's chest. Those are two kind of like plays that if you're the Jets right now, you can't overcome those things. And so I thought that the Steelers really did a pretty good job of making them pay for their mistakes. And, the other thing I thought that Russell Wilson started off, it looked like a guy that was a little bit rusty. But as he got in and got settled in and he's got into the flow and the rhythm of what was going on, you kind of got a chance to see, Adam, what Mike Tomlin saw, which is we have a chance to make our passing game better. So let's see if we can do it. Obviously, it worked out for him, and so now the question is, can he continue to duplicate that? Clearly, next week they play the Giants, who stink, so he should be able to do it one more time, and then you've got a bye week, and of course it starts to get a little bit more difficult after that. But to me, I thought as the game wore on, the Steelers got better. Their defense got better. I think one of the things that we've seen with this team is if the Steelers get a lead in the second half, good luck trying to catch them because, their defense, I think, just gets more and more aggressive and really comes after you and puts a lot of pressure on your quarterback, puts a lot of pressure on your team. And so this is sort of the formula. I think that they visioned, right? They envisioned it a little bit when they brought Russell Wilson here. They got 100 yards again from Najee Harris, who averaged 5 yards a carry, basically. I'm not sure there's a whole lot to really be upset about in this game. I mean, usually after these games, especially the last few years, even, the games they've won where they've won by, one score by the skin of their teeth or whatever, we have a lot to pick apart. But in this game, I mean, they just sort of came out and really just dominated the last three quarters of this game. And in a way that, as you said, we haven't seen them do much probably in 6-7 years.
Yeah, I'm excited to dig into it, Paul. Before we do, just want to thank our primary sponsor for the show, Pella Windows and Doors of Pittsburgh. There's no better place to get new windows and doors installed in your home than Pella, who can help you save on energy costs year-round. Schedule a free in-home consultation with your local Pella Windows and Doors to find the right product for your home and budget. Give them a call at 866-593-1560 to discuss your project further. That's 866-593-1560 to get started planning on your new windows and doors installation with Pella Windows and Doors of Pittsburgh. Paul, I think the deep passing is the thing with Russell Wilson that I don't think that we all knew that was going to still be there after, basically, as they were saying on the broadcast, most of a year off. But he comes out and starts to hit the balls, starts to hit I think they got that pass interference call on the one drive that set up a score. And we've talked a lot. I will admit that I have found the case for Russell Wilson to be unpersuasive, which is not to say that I didn't think that Russell Wilson could have success. I just, when I've listened to his advocates, in the media and things like that, it's often just come back to, kind of honking his resume and saying, well, he won a Super Bowl 10 years ago and Justin Fields didn't. So that's the most important thing. But I think what we saw tonight visually, Paul, was that, and I think the big question we had about if you take away Justin Fields' legs, how does this offense look? And I think Russell Wilson answered that question with the deep passing that Justin Fields has not been able to give this team, even though he got them to a 4-2 start. I mean, do you think it was important for Russell Wilson to play this way in this game to kind of show visually the difference between him and Justin Fields?
Well, I mean, I think that's the thing. Yes, and I think obviously that's what they were trying to do a little bit. The first time that he really threw the ball down the field was to Pickens. Might have been a little bit underthrown, but Pickens made a great play to catch it, and I think that sort of just got him going. He hit Freiermuth with a touch pass over the top. He hit Pickens again. He hit even though it was a shorter pass, the touchdown to Van Jefferson, I think. I mean, he did, I think, show exactly what is different between him and Justin Fields. And that is he's a much better passer. And I think we knew that. It was the question I had, and early on I was like, well, here it is. The offensive line, I think, has struggled a little bit. And I thought, boy, you got an immobile quarterback behind that offensive line. It could get really ugly really fast. But at the end of the day, I thought, hey, you know what? I liked what I saw from him. I thought he played well. I thought he did a lot of really good things. And so to me, I don't want to say it completely 100% exonerates the decision, but it does for 1 week. 3 weeks from now, we could be sitting here saying, well, he kind of is what we saw in Denver. But tonight he was pretty good. And he showed that he might still have something left in the tank.
Yeah, and I think he the thing that kind of stood out to me too was the trust that you could tell Arthur Smith was ready to let it fly a lot earlier than he has with Justin Fields. How many shows have we done this season where we said, are you going to let him open it up a little bit with Justin Fields? And I think early on, I had written in the notes, I said, I don't know, this looks pretty similar to me. But then I think there was the switch flipped much earlier for Arthur Smith and more enthusiastically, in that he kept letting Russ do it. It wasn't just one or two plays here and there. It was consistently throwing the ball downfield. So it seemed to me like it wasn't just a matter of what Mike Tomlin seen. It seems like Arthur Smith was calling the game much differently because of who he had at quarterback.
Well, absolutely. I think as the game wore on, it became more and more clear. I mean, I even thought, on that last drive I think it was the last drive. I think on that last drive, wasn't it where he hit Calvin Austin, I think, right? He had I don't know that they call that play with Justin Fields playing quarterback. I think that they probably don't call that play. But, as you say, they trust him to throw the ball. And I think the more he throws it, the better he's going to become. The more it becomes comfortable. I mean, I just think that really it's one of those situations where that's the guy they signed. That's the guy they signed or traded for or whatever they did. I forget who traded. I think they signed him, right?
Yeah,
Russell Wilson was a free agent, right? He was a free agent. It all runs together for me. Sorry, it's especially since it's like 11 o'clock at night or 11:30 or midnight or whatever it is. And, it's been a long day. But my point is that's why they brought him here. They needed somebody to give them a chance to have a passing game that resembles the modern NFL, which we could probably say they haven't had, right? You could make the argument they didn't even have it the first 5 weeks of this year or whatever it was, the first, 6 games or 5 games of this year. 6 games, I guess it was. The first 6 games of this year, they didn't have it. They didn't have it last year. They didn't have it the year before. They didn't have it in Ben Roethlisberger's really his last year. So we're talking about probably 5 years, 4.5 years since we've seen the modern passing game here in Pittsburgh. If it's not a mirage, if it's not a product of the Jets are bad and, they're missing a couple of key players on defense. And here's the thing I'm going to tell you, Adam, as an aside. And, I've been known maybe to bet on a few games here and there. I try really hard to make it a policy not to bet on a game that I'm covering, right? But when I saw that the Jets were favored in this game, it felt like stealing money. I would love to know what the rationale was. And listen, they were favored from the start. It wasn't like, on Tuesday when Tomlin basically made it clear that, Russell Wilson might start. It wasn't like the line changed then. I'm still not sure why they were favored in this game. I've seen nothing from the Jets' first 6 weeks that suggested they should have been favored. Am I wrong by that?
I mean, they got a lot of firepower, Paul. I mean, they got more firepower on paper than the Steelers, and people. I mean, that matters to people, and so then I think it matters to Vegas, and they set the line where they think they're going to get 50-50 money, not necessarily what they think was going to happen. I think this might have been a case of you look at on paper, you haven't seen Russell Wilson yet, and you know what the Steelers have been offensively, and you get Davante Adams in New York. I mean, how many Jets fans, how many fans around the country bet on the Jets just because of that trade? I mean, I think that was probably a lot of went into that, don't you?
I watched the Jets pretty much every game. I watched the 10-9 stinker they played against the Broncos. Okay. I thought listen, every so often, I feel like there's a line that is put out there where you're stealing money from Vegas. And that line tonight, I'm sorry. And listen, before the game, I was talking to some of the people in here in the press room. You know what I mean? And I was asking them the same question I just asked you. Why in the heck are the Jets favored? What am I missing here? At the end of the day, I just think that, we have to watch Russell Wilson play more, and he's got to do, what he did tonight, just continue to build on it. But he looks like, if healthy, he looks like a guy who gives the Steelers a legitimate chance to have a passing game that puts them in the game when they play against better teams, right?
Yeah. Well, and Paul, I think that might have been why there was so much intrigue around his injury and why Mike Tomlin chose to play it safe, because if you felt like you could have what we saw tonight on a regular basis, why would you jeopardize that and having, a nagging injury that just persists? That's what happens with a lot of these guys. When you put them in there, it nags throughout the season. It saps on performance. And then at the end of the year, we're talking about these guys as washed up or cooked, or, they lose jobs over this type of stuff. So I think Mike Tomlin deserves credit for having the patience to say, we know what we think we can get from Russ when healthy, and we're not going to rush him back. And we're also going to see what we might have in Justin Fields. Last question on Russ, Paul, before I get to some of the other guys on offense. You mentioned the offensive line. What did you think of the way they interacted? Because I did have a couple of notes. I think that first drive, there was a play where he couldn't step up and get away from the rush, and that fizzled the first drive. I think that first drive of the second quarter was the other one I had written down, where there was, pretty wide space in front of him. I think that's a play Justin Fields maybe turns into 20 yards. So I think he gave that up. But I also don't think that this fear that he was going to get hammered behind this offensive line came true at all. And it seemed like he was able to compensate for the weaknesses in front of him pretty well. So just in terms of the way that interplay is, what was your read on everything with the line?
Well, I mean, I thought, there was at least 2 plays where I thought Broderick Jones was trying to get him killed. But the other thing about it is, I thought he did a good job of just getting rid of the ball, which has not really been his MO all the time. I mean, he's been a guy that's tried to, extend plays, and he's taken a lot of sacks, and he's gotten beat up a little bit because of it. But at the end of the day, I thought today he did a really good job of getting rid of the ball. There were a number of times where the Jets had opportunities maybe to sack him or at least hit him or get, the ball out of his hands. And he did a pretty good job of just sort of having a little bit quicker release than maybe we've seen, because one of the things that's been the knock on him is that, he tries to extend plays so much that he takes a lot of sacks. And he didn't do that tonight. He really didn't. And I thought he made good decisions too. I mean, one of the things about the Steelers, if you look at them in some of these games, one of the biggest differences between them and the teams they're playing against is they don't turn the ball over. You know what I'm saying? They just, and if you don't turn the ball over, which is what, they're asking their quarterbacks not to turn the ball over, with that defense, it's been shown week in and week out. With that defense, if you don't give them short fields, they're going to be a really difficult team to drive the field, the length of the field. So I thought he did a really good job of just sort of making sure that he managed not turning it over, but also not putting himself in bad positions where he's holding the ball too long, taking sacks, putting them in third and 20s and all the other stuff that happens when you take when you have bad plays like that. I mean, I thought he was really good, to be honest. As the game got on, I thought he made good decisions. I think he really did his best to try and make sure that he protected the ball, but also he kept them in front of the sticks, so to speak.
Were you surprised by the boos early on, Paul? Because my perception was there was a lot of people who wanted to see Russell Wilson. Maybe it's anecdotal, and I read the YouTube comments, and maybe that's a different audience than the fans who buy tickets. I don't know, but I was a little surprised how quickly they got on him. I get why people liked what they saw from Justin Fields, but I thought that Russ would get a little bit more of a honeymoon before the boos came out.
No, I thought I had no doubt they were going to come out. If there was a couple of mishaps early or whatever, I had no doubt about it because that's just how the fans are. You know what I mean? There are a lot of people that thought, there's still a lot of people. I mean, I'm sure tomorrow, if you watch, some of these stupid hot take shows that you see on, national TV, you'll have the Ryan Clarks of the world still pining for Justin Fields to be the player, to be the quarterback. I mean, never has there been a guy who's accomplished less that has more fanboys in the national media than Justin Fields. So I'll be very interested to see how the narrative sort of unfolds this week. But there were a lot of people in the fan base, who were feeling very loyal to Justin Fields. And listen, I was one of the people that said I didn't think he did anything to lose his job. I didn't know exactly why you felt the need to change, but obviously Mike Tomlin had his reasons, and it came to fruition somewhat. And so now I think you look at it and you say, well, let's see if he can continue to build on it. But no, it doesn't ever surprise me when fans jump to conclusions like they did tonight.
Paul, let's talk about Najee a little bit. Another big night for him. 102 yards on 21 carries, averaged 4.9, got that late touchdown. Was he setting up the pass for them, or was the pass setting things up for him and setting things up for the way Arthur Smith? We were told Arthur Smith wants to do things of hammer the ball and have these 100-yard rushers. I think it was very, mutually beneficial. I think that it was, synchronized pretty well. What was your read on Najee and the impact the passing success had for him?
I thought it was the opposite, Adam. I thought the Steelers' threat of passing really opened things up for Najee Harris, because I thought early on they had some slow sledding and they were struggling a little bit. But then all of a sudden, once they hit some passes and forced the Jets now to to sort of get out of the box or whatever we say, Once we saw that, I mean, I thought it was really interesting just to see how it affected the way that the Steelers were able to play. So, to me, I think it was great. I thought they complemented each other well, the passing game and the running game. I thought that this was the first game, though, Adam, where I thought the passing game actually opened it up for the running game.
Another big night for George Pickens as well. 111 yards on 5 catches. That's 22 per catch. He had his touchdown. Do you think we're going to have the George Pickens headlines fade if Russ can continue to get the ball to him this way?
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's how it is. Listen, all of these guys, all they want to do is catch the ball. And the receivers, they all think they're open every time. It ain't like he's saying anything different than just about any other receiver, especially guys that think they're a number one, which, better or worse, he's a number one. I think that if he has 100 yards and a touchdown every week, he'll be the happiest camper on the planet. The other guy I thought they got involved was Pat Freiermuth a little bit. It's amazing how you've got a quarterback that sees the field, reads the defenses, and makes the throws. It's amazing how all of a sudden you can bring some of these weapons into the mix. So, I think we're going to see happy. I think that it's funny. Before the week started, Adam, or late in the week, there are these like mysterious stories coming out of the locker room that the players in the locker room, they wanted to see Justin Fields, right? They wanted to play for Justin Fields. Well, maybe. All I know is this: if you're a skill position guy on the Steelers right now, you look at what just happened tonight and you say, wow. This is what it looks like when a quarterback throws the ball around the field a little bit.
I don't fault the guys in that locker room for if they did want to see Justin Fields, because they'd been in battle with him, that they had not been with Russ. But I think sometimes we think that matters more than I don't think it matters a whole lot what the players think. And I go back to the example of what was his name? It was Alan Faneca. After Ben Roethlisberger went in his rookie year, and he was asked, "Did you want to? How did you feel about a rookie coming in?" And Faneca famously said, "It stinks. I don't want to see a rookie in there." And that was, a future Hall of Famer that he felt that way about. So sometimes the locker room isn't always right either.
No, and I'll say this, Adam. This is the one thing I'll say, and I was going to get to it when we were talking about receivers. For all the blustering we're doing, okay. For all the blustering that we're doing about Russell Wilson throwing the ball and the passing game and all that stuff, George Pickens had 5 receptions. Every other receiver had a total of 3 receptions. One was Calvin Austin, that throw over the middle thing. When it was like late and they were basically, the Jets were trying to get the ball back. And Russell Wilson just threw that touch pass. So that was 36 yards to him. And Van Jefferson was wide open on a touchdown, but basically 15. So you had 3 catches for your receivers not named George Pickens. Now, you made up for it a little bit because you had 6 for your tight ends. But now that I would think that people have watched a little bit of film. I have a hard time believing that Darnell Washington will have 4 receptions in a single game the rest of the way. All I'm trying to say is, even with a better quarterback, even with a guy that throws the ball better, even with him, right? The bottom line is the receivers not named George Pickens are still very pedestrian.
Is it you want them to go out there and get Mike Williams? I mean, based on what you saw tonight, I mean, is he the guy that's going to make a difference for this group, or is this just going to be the latest name that doesn't come to fruition?
I mean, I don't, who are they going to go get? Cortland Sutton, him. I heard the 49ers are talking about trading Debo. Go back to that well one time. I mean, who knows? They've got to get somebody though, Adam. They can't continue to do this. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I think especially if you have the capability to throw, you need guys to throw too. So that's certainly going to be a storyline to monitor after the success they had tonight. Paul, let's get to the defense. Before we do, just want to thank another sponsor, Goldberg, Persky & White. If you were diagnosed with mesothelioma or lung cancer, call your local attorneys at Goldberg, Persky & White. For over 40 years, their firm has represented thousands of lung cancer and mesothelioma victims. Call 1-800-COMPLEX or visit gpwlaw.com for a free consultation. I think we got to start with Beanie Bishop, Paul. The 2 interceptions sets up the 1-yard touchdown by Russell Wilson. It was that close to a pick 6. Was he emanating some Mike Hilton vibes for you tonight? And is he, the long-awaited heir to that position, or are we still talking about Cam Sutton here in a couple of weeks when that suspension ends? What's your read on how far he has come within this defense?
He played well tonight, obviously. 1 interception I thought was a really good interception. The other one was,
he was beat. He was beat on the play.
He was absolutely toasted on the play, and the ball hit the receiver in the chest. I'm not sure. It's funny, like when we talk about narratives, Adam. There's a large contingent of people that hate Aaron Rodgers. And so as soon as that happened on the chat, a bunch of people were going on and on about Aaron Rodgers. And I'm like, he hit the guy in the chest. Like, he threw the pass right in his chest. So to me, I don't know. I think that he played well tonight. He's just got to continue to get better. He's young. He's going to make mistakes. there are going to be times when he does get burnt like that, and the guy doesn't let the ball hit him in the chest, But in this case, I thought he had a good game tonight. I think what he did was, what you are looking for him in terms of his maturation as a player.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds when Cam Sutton's back and they have to start making some choices, with that slot corner role. Paul also wanted to talk a little bit about Alex Highsmith coming back tonight and the difference you thought that he made. I just think when they have that pass rush cooking, Paul, sometimes, teams hit plays in the first half. I think we've seen now multiple times that over the course of a game, how much having, Watt and Highsmith in the game just wears guys down. And I think Nick Herbig is kind of emerging into being that number 3 that gives them even more depth and even more snaps that they're able to wear these guys down. But even tonight with just the lead 2, I think it just changes the way this defense is able to play over the course of 60 minutes, even though sometimes, they are still giving up some big plays.
Well, I think part of it's just the depth, You can have fresh guys late. That's such an important thing, Adam. I think having fresh guys late is so important. And being able to do that because you're rolling guys in like that, I think that's a huge advantage. Adding a third player into your rotation, especially a guy like Alex Highsmith, who, I think people have forgotten, he's a good player. It's almost like Herbig had a few sacks or a couple of big high-impact plays, and all of a sudden it's like, well, they don't need Alex Highsmith anymore. No, he's a good player. And anytime you can add a good player back into your rotation, it's really good. And I thought, he showed up. He had a couple of quarterback hits tonight. I thought he is a guy that as he gets into it, a little bit more, and he's, really starting to feel it. And of course, the timing then comes back and all of that good stuff. I agree with you. I think it's such a huge advantage. Especially, like I said, because you can give Watt a couple of plays off. You can give Highsmith a couple of plays off. You can give, you bring Herbig in only in certain situations, and you make him that much more effective. I mean, I think at the end of the day, when you look at what they've done, man, especially when you look inside and you see that Peyton Wilson led the team in tackles tonight, and he's sort of your third guy or whatever. To me, I think that linebacker group, now that they got everybody at their disposal, I think that linebacker group can really become something special for this team.
You set up my next question. Well, Paul, is Peyton Wilson a better linebacker right now than Patrick Queen? Because this is not the first time that's happened.
I think in terms, I'll say this. I think he's a more complete player. And I think he's going to be a better player by the end of the year. You still get a couple of those big wham hits from Patrick Queen that, some of those things can potentially change a game. You know what I'm saying? But Peyton Wilson is a guy who knows where he's supposed to be. He clearly studies film. He's not out of position. When he gets to a spot, he makes a tackle. He understands coverage. He understands, playing the run. I think that he's a guy, to me, boy, he gives them, you want to talk about a guy that gives them something different. Your linebacking group, to me, Adam, I think it's as strong as we've seen it. And I mean, I'd have to really think long and hard. The last time they had a linebacking group that I felt like this good about. Where
probably when Shazier was in that lineup.
Right. And I don't know that I felt this good about all 6 of them, And when I say 6, I mean the 3 outside, the combination of 3 outside and the 3 inside. I know there's a couple other guys they throw in, but you understand what I'm saying. Basically, the 3 guys in the rotation, outside and inside. Boy, I think this is as good of a group as they've had.
Paul, a lot of times on these shows, we talked a little bit about it at the top. I just wanted to dig into this a little bit more. You and I talk about how bad some of these offenses, the Steelers' defense dominates are. I mean, we talked about Bo Nix that way early in the year. How many guys did we talk about that way last season? But this was a group that was loaded with playmakers. Was it more that the Steelers played well, or that those guys are a little washed up maybe?
I honestly think – I mean, I'm trying to pull this up right now. I honestly think that Aaron Rodgers is done. I mean, he doesn't have much left in the tank. I think their offensive line stinks. They've got a really good running back and at least one really good receiver. And beyond that, I just don't – there's not a whole lot to really like about their offense. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, they've played 6 games. They're averaging 18.8 points per game. You add this one in, what'd they score tonight, 15? I mean, that average is probably going to go down under 18 points a game. I think that sometimes we get so caught up in looking at the names, we don't actually look at the production. And again, you know, I had one of these self-appointed Steelers experts on X or Twitter or whatever the hell we call it nowadays. He was going on and on about how this is an important game for playoff positioning. And I'm like, playoff positioning? Like tiebreaker. I mean, the Jets are going to struggle to win 7 games. What are we talking about here? And I still maintain. I know they play the Dolphins twice and I think the Patriots twice. You watch, they'll go like 2-2 in those games. Because they're just, I mean, we're so enamored with it's Aaron Rodgers, it's this. That offensive line is not good. So let's start there. And secondly, they're probably going to trade one of their receivers. I would take the running back. I think he's really good. But other than that, I'm just not enamored with him. So I don't take anything away from the Steelers. They did what they had to do. They dominated. They were good. But I just think and listen, it's not hindsight being 2020. I've been asking all day long, why are the Jets favored in this game? Because I think they're not good. I just don't think they're good. So this isn't, let's try and take some of the shine off the Steelers. They did what you're supposed to do. You know, last week they did what you're supposed to do against bad teams, and they dominated them. And they did it again this week, I think, against a bad team. And next week I would expect them to do it again against the Giants because they're a bad team. And then we'll go from there.
Paul, a couple quick hitters here to wrap up the show. Thoughts on the blocked extra point that got overturned on the leverage penalty, and then it was a 3-point swing. I don't know how many times I've seen that in the NFL since they moved the kick, the extra point back, where not only did the play not count, but then you set New York up on the 1 to then go for 2, and if the Steelers had played offense the way we've seen them play offense most of the season, that would have been a huge play.
Right. Absolutely. It turned out it wasn't. But it could have been. And, of course, it was the wrong call. I mean, based on my knowledge of the rule and the replay, I don't know that it should have even been called because I don't know that he actually touched the guy or whatever, So it could have been. But this goes to show you, Adam, if you score points – You don't have to live and die by every single call that happens or every single bad thing that happens in a game. When you give yourself a margin for error, guess what? Something like that goes against you, you can overcome it. So I think that's the biggest thing about that play was I thought it was the wrong call, but it turned out to be irrelevant anyway.
Paul, the throwback jerseys came back tonight. I feel like I have to ask this every time they wear them. Why are the block numbers not like the thing? Like, can we get past this 90s font that they've been using? I mean, they popped so well on TV, and there's tradition in them. I mean, why is that not the jersey?
Because if you keep bouncing around to different jerseys, you can sell a bunch of jerseys. That's why. It's all marketing. You know that. I mean, I have this discussion all the time. It took Pitt almost 25 years to figure out what the right colors and right jersey was to go on. But even now, they still, you know what I mean? They still go to different uniforms and different uniform combinations and everything else. And it's like, why are you doing this? Well, because they want to sell as many as they can sell. That's why.
Paul, what is your appraisal of big picture, what tonight does for this team? Do you still need to see Russ do it a few more times to believe that this is something they can repeat with consistency? Or are you already ready to say that, that this team's going to have a chance to improve on those 10 wins last season, whether or not they win a playoff game, but at least they have a chance to win, significantly more games?
I would say the larger issue to me, or the larger question to me, is his health. Can he stay healthy? If he stays healthy, I think they can be pretty good. Now again, we're going to find out a lot more because they play the Giants, who stink. Then they have a bye week, but right after the bye, they play at Washington, who has maybe the hottest quarterback in the league right now. This guy's out of control. And I know he got hurt today, but I'm assuming he'll be back in 3 weeks from now or whatever it is. I'm assuming he'll be back. And then they play the Ravens. So we'll know pretty quickly, right? That's 3 games. The next week doesn't matter to me. I mean, they're going to win. They're going to win that game. After that, the 2 games, one against Washington, one against the Ravens, then we're going to find out a whole lot more about where this team is at.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thank you, Paul, for joining me tonight. We're going to wrap that show here. Let everybody get to bed. It's 12:18 on the East Coast. But everyone, make sure you stay tuned to the Post-Gazette Sports Now YouTube channel. We're going to have a lot more coming from Acrisure Stadium. Jerry Dulac, Ray Fittipaldo will do their post-game video from the field, giving their takes on tonight. Christopher Carter will be on the North Shore Drive Monday morning. Paul and I will be back Thursday with our usual Thursday show. And, of course, we will be here Monday night after the game against the Giants. So if you're not already subscribed, subscribe to the channel. Plenty more coming at you. If you like the video, please pop a like on the like button. Help us out in the YouTube algorithm. We always appreciate that. And we will talk to you all again real soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.